Hey, this is David Owen.
And this is Marian Cowagowan.
And this is You Show Me Yours, a podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that they loved before the first date. And this time I was made to watch Entertaining Angels.
Yep, it's the movie that kind of made me pretty insufferable for a large part of my senior year in college, because I saw this and was very into the idea of helping the poor and being religious and social justice-y at the same time.
Wow.
And I was kind of a snot about it, as I recall. But on a serious note, this movie has, and the viewpoint that it portrays has kind of shaped my religious life a lot in the intervening 20 plus years. So in the intro, we talk about movies that we loved before the first date. I would not say this is a movie that I love, but this is a movie that tells you a lot about me. So that's what we're going for in this episode, is just me explaining this movie to Dave, and he can learn about my spiritual viewpoint if he has any questions about it at this point, 20 years into our relationship. So it's that kind of episode. Last time you listened to Congo, this is going to be different. Sorry.
Totally different.
Anaconda was last episode. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But same.
Yeah.
So, if you have not heard of this movie, which odds are you have not, this is a biopic of Dorothy Day, who was a journalist in the early part of the 20th century, and then converted to Catholicism and founded the Catholic Worker Movement, which was a combination newspaper and kind of, they have what are called houses of hospitality. It's where people live in community. And the idea is that if you work for the Catholic Worker, you live there, you kind of give up your material lifestyle and live with the poor to help the poor. And there are Catholic Worker houses all over the country, all over the world, I think. They're and they all operate differently according to what the community needs. But there's soup kitchens, there are places to live, there's, I think, drug treatment. There's all kinds of other things. And Dorothy was very involved in anti-nuclear protests and protesting the war. And I imagine things like passing the ERA. I don't know, but all sorts of 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s crunchy things she protested for, and was arrested some huge number of times. She died in 1980. She is now, the Catholic Worker is still going, and she is somewhere in the process of moving towards being canonized a saint by the Catholic Church. I think a lot of, I certainly regard her as a saint, whether or not she's actually canonized, but they're gonna see if they can do it on paper, all official, like, but if you know that Dorothy Day was pretty rad. But Dave, what did you know about her before this? You probably had heard me talk about her a little bit, but I don't imagine you knew very much.
No, not a lot. Yeah.
I
mean, heard the name. I knew she was something to do with, charity, feeding the poor kind of stuff.
Yeah. Outside of the Catholic Church, I think she is much less well known, and especially now that she's been dead for 40 plus years. Mm-hmm. But the reason that I think really became attracted to her ideas in college was, so I was a journalism major. So I'm a journalist, a Catholic, and a bit of a lefty. So it's the trifecta, right? I'm imagining, she's got these journalistic roots, and then and the Catholic Worker, I think, is not what you would call an investigative, hard-hitting paper, but I've actually never been in a city where you can get it. I think that it is more of it talks about the needs of the poor and probably helps pay for some of the operations. I don't think that it's not like a Mother Jones type thing. Same vibes, but different different structure. But the idea of using journalism to talk about issues that real people were having and draw attention to these things was very appealing to me, and just a way to combine spiritual Catholicism and political activism I liked. So we have this biopic.
Yep.
It's not great, I have to say. This is not a subtle movie at all.
No.
And I wrote in my notes, why are so many religious movies bad?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've seen many that are not, I don't know. So many religious movies do these broad strokes, which this does a lot. Like, it tries to condense like most of her life into this thing. And I'm just like, you can do,
Well, yeah.
You can, here's a week in her life. Here's one issue. Here's the
Yeah,
but
they try to tell so much of a story. I mean, I think part of the answer is like they've got a good cast, but I think maybe some of the people behind the scenes, you're not picking from the cream of the crop. Like, for instance, the director of this movie, whose name escapes me, but I was looking at his IMDb, that same year directed a movie called Co-Ed Call Girl. With Tori Spelling. So maybe not the cream of the crop on directors.
And not even, I was going to say, I noticed that somebody in the credits had an SJ after his name, which means he's a Jesuit priest. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if you're pulling from the religious ranks to get people to do this, but I don't think that's a religious guy if he's maybe call girls.
But I'm sure it was a Tori Spelling movie. I'm sure that like produced by Aaron Spelling, no doubt. Like that's not going to be him.
So it's virginal,
right? But it's This Is How Girls Get Corrupted, which is a perfect bait for a religious movie, like for sure. So yeah, I mean, I imagine probably the director was Catholic, and also then directed a bunch of just like straight to video stuff and television shows after that. This may have been one of the only major releases that this director directed, as far as I saw on the IMDb. It was a lot of not pseudonyms, but like different versions of his name. Yeah. Like they credited as this, credited as that, like just very weird.
You know who wrote the script, or at least is credited, or maybe partially credited? John Wells, who worked on ER and The West Wing.
Wow, nice.
Which, like, I feel like there's some clunkers in this. Sure. The dialogue is not always, it's designed to get a message across, and it's going to hit you several times. Like, there's the
revisions that I'm sure were done are probably massive.
Yes. Well, and again, and if you take a cynical view of religion, which I am sure many of our listeners do, you got to revise and make sure that all the product looks good. And so I imagine there were a lot of, we can't admit this about her. We got to put this in the. There were probably a lot of cooks going into this. So maybe I shouldn't blame John Wells for all of them. But I mean, there's a point where Dorothy's living with her brother and sister-in-law, and all these people are coming over to the apartment to be fed and like sleep on the couch and stuff. And at some point they're like, okay, this is too many people.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, please, it needs to happen. And her sister-in-law is like, they say you should something. You never know when you'll be entertaining angels, which is a line from somewhere. And like, she said the name of the movie. That's never a good sign.
Cue the Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
Pointing at the television.
Yeah, exactly.
Meme.
And they're convinced very quickly. And she's pregnant. Well, they're about to have a baby in all of this chaos. And I'm like, I don't think that's a selfish thing to say, nah.
But the funny thing is that line comes at a point where there is one guy who is constantly coming over and talking their ears off about helping the poor and this sort of stuff that and that they agree to this when there's one guy who's constantly over, then
the
smash cut to 20 people and they have a soup kitchen.
Yes.
And
and apparently you said it was okay. So speaking of one guy, the one guy is Martin Sheen.
The talky guy.
Yes.
Talkative guy. Playing
Peter, I think in the movie they said Moran. I say it Morin in my head. He's French. Some of these characters I think were probably invented for the movie, but he was a real person.
Or amalgamations,
yes, he was a real person. And apparently he was a bit of a character. Sure. And he's definitely a character here. First of all, Martin Sheen's accent, like, what?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's not... I can do French accents too, just like this. But no one's going to hire me for a movie, and they shouldn't have had him speak like that either.
Yeah, his was better than that, but not by a whole lot. Like, this would have been a perfect role for a Tim Curry,
right?
Who would have. He would have he would have totally knocked it out of the park.
Right. Well, Martin Sheen apparently met Peter Morin in real life, or he met Dorothy Day, or both. I don't know. He himself is Catholic and is in the sort of Dorothy Day social justice spirituality column of things. And he also has been arrested in protests multiple times and, blah, blah. Fun fact, which I probably won't get to bring up another time because I don't know if we'll ever talk about TV shows. When he was in talks to do The West Wing, he said he would only do it if the president could be Catholic.
Nice.
So Martin Sheen, also one of those good guys, probably will never be a saint, and that's fine. But
yes,
yeah. So he has a personal connection to this. Dorothy Day, by the way, is played by Moira Kelly, who, if you're our age, you know her from The Cutting Edge. Topic. And it's funny. She's about the same age here, just a couple years older. And I was looking for Kate Mosley characteristics. And there's a little bit of Kate Mosley in Dorothy Day, which is
a couple times.
Not a compliment, but okay. If you're younger, you know her from One Tree Hill as somebody's mom. I don't know. And she does something now. I don't know what it is. But also on The West Wing, there's a lot of West Wing presence here.
Yeah. She played the righty, right?
No, she wasn't.
Is that not her?
She would no. She was just a thorn in everybody's side. No, she was a lefty,
not like but a different kind of lefty than they were.
Maybe,
she was somehow in conflict with them over stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Talk about a divisive character. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, but yeah, this movie loves to hit you over the head with a lot of things about Dorothy, and I think it goes into way more of her backstory.
Yeah. You didn't need all that. You could have started at the freaking Catholic worker.
Yeah, I think. Well,
been fine.
Part of it is her conversion story, which she was a journalist and an activist, which I have been trained in the school of journalists should be neutral, and the idea that she is marching in a protest and then writing about it. I'm like, you can't do that. But anyway, it was it was the 20s. It was different. And she is having an affair with Lionel something. And she gets pregnant, and he tells her have an abortion, and he implies if you have an abortion, we'll still be together, and he disappears. Yeah. And she goes
this devastates her to the point where she becomes a beach hermit.
Yes, and she goes into seclusion on Staten Island, which I've never been to Staten Island, but it
doesn't look like this now.
No, not at all. She's in what is kind of my ideal setting on this deserted beach in a cottage that looks completely weather-beaten and downtrodden, but on the inside has all the comforts of home. And she, has enough money to go to the grocery store and do various things and write, but she gets to just wander glumly along the sand and wear a lot of sweaters. Yeah,
she just always has a basket with her.
Well, yeah, and there's this. She meets someone in a second. And he's talking about, I'm going to go get clams. And she's like, I like clams. And I was like, isn't that what the basket is for? Isn't that what you doing? So otherwise she's just carrying the basket.
Collecting driftwood? So, what are you doing?
But this is pretty much my ideal. Live in seclusion. You can go into town when you want to. You got the beach. You got the cottage. You get to wear a lot of sweaters. Really, the sweaters are key. I'm in a climate where I don't get to wear sweaters very much.
Your cottage can't be on like the coast of Florida.
No.
It's got to be far north as you can get.
Yes. I don't think Staten Island has any affordable available beach cottages. I don't know where does, but if you can wear sweaters there, I am so there. So she goes there, meets up with someone that she knew in New York, Forster Batterham.
Sure.
Which is a mouthful of a name. He was from North Carolina, actually. The actor is from Georgia, but he has a strong accent, which I guess kind of works as North Carolina accent. They are together for a while. It's real hinky with the timelines. At the beginning, we see 1917, and then there's a timestamp that says 1933, and those are the only dates that we get in there.
Yeah, and then some things that seem like they should happen over the course of weeks, they're like, earlier today, this thing happened. Like, wait, that wasn't a week ago or more? Like,
yeah. But anyway, she gets pregnant, and she says, I thought that I wouldn't ever be able to have a child because in 1920 or whenever she had her abortion, they were not exactly technically perfect things, and there was a lot of internal damage done, I assume. And so I think
she just goes up to some lady's apartment for this, not to any sort of, which, as it was in those days.
Right. And there are no words exchanged. Douchebag just says, "I'll be downstairs," and he's not. Like,
that's it. He's
just
gone forever.
Her. Like, no. Yeah. Listen, he was there for the conception. He needs to be there for the end of things, whether it's a termination or the birth. Like, that's a non-negotiable. That's a deal breaker, ladies. Isn't that from 30 Rock? Anyway,
I don't know.
Let Liz Lemon and Dorothy Day tell you how it is. But anyway, and so she thought that she couldn't get pregnant again, and she's like, "Okay, no, I'm having this baby," and he's like, "Okay."
No, he's like, "Who's stopping you?" Like,
right?
I don't. Yeah, you're the way you're recounting this is like, first of all, she explicitly says that she didn't think God would allow her to have another baby.
Well, okay,
and then anticipating like his pushback, and he's like, "Nope, I'm good with that."
Yeah,
like, yeah.
Well, okay, so that's yeah. And I think he takes that as, or it is an indication of her growing this kernel of faith and spirituality in her.
Sure.
She mentions God. And it twigs something in him. For me, though, just as I don't know, this is something that I don't really realize about myself until I'm talking with a person who is emphatically not a person of faith, how just references to God and various spiritual things are just part of my vernacular. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily mean God leaned down and put the baby in my womb and but it's just a saying, really, but it's a saying that a non-religious person would never make. So
sure, yeah. Well, and that whole relationship is messed up.
Well, yes, because at some point she says, "I want to get married," and he says, "I don't want to be trapped," or something. And I'm like, "You are here with a baby. That traps you. If you're gonna say trapped, that traps you way more than a marriage certificate."
Sure, yeah. And
he disappears.
This movie takes pleasure in Forrester, in demonizing Forrester, the evil atheist.
Yeah.
Even though, again, I will bring the male perspective again. He comes into this relationship. At the time, they are both presumably atheists. Mm-hmm. And he says, "You just be you and I'll be me and things will be great." And again, much like a different movie, mm-hmm. he doesn't change at all. He stays the same and she changes.
Okay. We are not going to relitigate The Mirror Has Two Faces.
We're not. It's fine. I'm just saying, he doesn't change. He is the same person that he was, who, thought they were just in this thing and was happy to explore what it became after a child and was there for all that. And then as she changed, the relationship ended. However it happened in real life, the mm-hmm. implied portrayal is he just couldn't come along for the ride. Like, if he had just either, tolerated her religiosity or came along with her for the religious ride, everything would have been fine.
Well,
but because he stayed true to who he was when he got into a relationship that was explicitly started on the premise of them just being who they were, and no pressure, no commitments, no strings attached. Let's just see where this goes. He stayed the same. She changed, and that ended the relationship.
Well, I will say two things. One, the straw that broke the camel's back for him seemed to be when she said she wanted to get married. Nothing about religion. You could argue that those are connected, but anyway. Also, people are allowed to change over time.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm not saying that people aren't allowed to change over time. I'm just saying that relationship ended because it was a relationship built on the people that they were when they got into that relationship, and then one of them changed and the other one didn't. Well, I can't see the one that didn't change as the villain any more than I see the person that changed as the villain. But
okay. In
the end, however the actual relationship went, I don't know. Mm-hmm. He is portrayed as the one ending the relationship. Like, his character felt very much like that sort of free thinker that, whether it's, pretentious or whatever it isn't, doesn't believe in the mm-hmm. in the institution of marriage or whatever, so yeah, I mean, it was, and also marriage is, at that time, for atheists, there wouldn't have been an alternative. Marriage was explicitly mm-hmm. religious, so probably he would have seen it as another step towards her religification.
And you know what? now that you say that, at the time, I don't think a married woman had many rights as her own person. Probably Dorothy,
Probably
as a
not.
single woman, would have had more rights than as a married woman. So there is that too. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm not gonna invest a whole lot in what actually happened, because I assume that what actually happened is different than what we've seen.
Oh,
And
for sure.
I do know, because I actually listened to a talk from Dorothy's granddaughter a couple weeks ago through my church, that Tamar, their daughter, she's portrayed in this movie as her father just isn't around for the first 10 years of her life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like she's going to have much of a relationship with him after that either. In real life, they had a good relationship, and she went to visit him at his house, so
yeah.
Just based on that, I know there are some things that are fudged for the movie, but
yeah.
But so Forster leaves, and Dorothy and Tamar, the baby, are in her cottage of depression on the beach, wearing matching sweaters. And then 1933, boom, Tamar is older, I don't know, 10, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're moving back to New York City, and she's going back to being a journalist.
Yeah, presumably at some point the money ran out or something.
Colleagues, yeah. And then she's staying with her brother and sister. And Peter just sort of shows up at their apartment one day, and it's just starts talking and eating a lot of their food. And one day is like, hey, guess what? You should start a place to feed people and house them.
He doesn't say that. He just brings a bunch of people in. That would have been so much more
details,
so much more of an appropriate way to do it.
Well, also, yeah, and he's like,
he's just like, well, they needed a place to stay.
And and Dorothy's like, how are you going to do that? He's like, I'm not gonna, you're gonna.
Yeah. Well, yeah, with the paper, when he says start a newspaper, he's like, I don't know, you just figure it out.
Yeah.
You're the one who's the expert here.
Yes. Which I almost admire the audacity to just be like, hey, you're going to do this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't, now that you're excited about the idea, I don't know how to do it. You got to figure it out. And for whatever reason, maybe in real life, he sold it better than he does in the movie, or, something in Dorothy said, hey, yes, we need to do this. She's like, okay, yes, we'll figure it out. And then things grow and they get a place of their own, and et cetera, et cetera. And sort of the climax of the movie is when there have been some serious growing pains about who is allowed to stay there, and there's money issues, and they don't have enough money for all the things in the same month. And then boom, at the end, she apologizes for her faults, and hey, everybody come together. You can leave if you want to. It feels like there's a military movie that does this. There's a sports movie that does this. I won't fault you if you decide to leave. And then I guess the next morning, and everybody is still there. Yeah.
Which is, that's like the lamest part of the movie.
Yes.
So much of this movie does not you don't get any. This movie needed a voiceover or something. It needed a narration or an inner monologue.
Needed a better motif.
Because you say, they devote a fair amount of the beginning of the movie to her conversion, but they don't. They don't do anything. They don't talk about, because as a non-religious person, the thing that fascinates me most about religious people, and the thing that no religious person can actually ever tell you, is what that spark to believe is like.
Yeah.
Most people don't have it, and most conversions don't occur organically the way her conversion occurred. Most conversions occur around traumatic life events. Mm-hmm. Survive a life and death situation. You are at your worst point, addict or whatever, and you come around through a religious program. Death of a relative. There's always some traumatic event that triggers it. And for her, it just she just almost hits a nun one day on her bicycle, and then slowly becomes religious, but they don't give you any of that sort of motivation, and that's what it, so it doesn't feel genuine when it happens.
That's a good point. I think it's earned that she comes to realize that people of faith can help the poor in ways that atheists do.
Sure.
But yeah, why does she want to be baptized? She's shown praying the rosary. She had a lot of other devotions. Where's all that come from? It's that part is not really earned.
And it's insulting to me to have these things seem mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
the charity for your fellow man and atheism to seem like they can't go together. Like I get the point of showing her in New York in the suffragette stuff, because that's showing you it's that sort of big city intellectuals who have these ideas about how to help people, but they're not doing anything. They're just sitting in their wine bars drinking cognac and they're not actually acting. So she has those ideals about helping people instilled in her by those people, and then sees a nun putting them into action. That doesn't have to compute that way. Like, those of us who are not religious think about helping people. Those people who are religious help people. And because it's not done with any sort of, like I said, for lack of a better word, come to Jesus moment. It's not, you don't understand the character motivation. You don't understand how she bridges the gap from, I had these ideals and now I'm putting them into action, but I'm now putting them into action explicitly through a religious motif.
That's fair. For context, we should say, and we've mentioned this in previous episodes, but if you are a new listener, this is new to you. I am a cradle Catholic. I've had a couple of slips and falls along the way, but I'm still practicing. Dave was not. I call you culturally Christian because your family would have described themselves as Christian, but you didn't go to church. Now you didn't really describe yourself as.
I mean, for lack of a better word, I'm an atheist because atheist means nothing more than do you believe in a God? Do I believe in a God? Not currently. Do I believe God doesn't exist? No, because that is equally as untenable as a belief as God exists is. It requires evidentiary proof to make either claim. My claim is I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced of a Christian God. I'm not convinced of the Muslim God is the Christian God, but I'm not convinced of the Hindu God. I'm not convinced of the Native American gods. I'm not convinced of the Greek gods. I'm not convinced of any gods.
I do think that this movie relies on some shorthand, and if you're not already Christian, probably Catholic, there's a lot of stuff that's going to go over your head. And so, no, I mean, now that you pointed out, there's a lot about her conversion that is left blank. And for me, it was just my brain filled in.
She walks into a church one day, sees a nun feeding the homeless, of which there are like 4 in Staten Island. And at this time, and that seems to be all it takes. That's it. That, she begins to do something she could have done absent the church. And that seems to make her religious.
Probably didn't need to go to Staten Island to do either. Well, I think, again, I don't know how true to life this is. I'm going to assume that there's a lot of fudging the truth. So I'm going to assume that the screenwriter made this a nun on purpose. I think so the only male clergy that we see are at her baptism. And then the Cardinal of New York, Manhattan, comes to her and basically is like, you can't call yourself Catholic. You're embarrassing.
You're causing a lot of problems.
You're consorting with communists and we can't. And at the time, like, this is something that has never really made sense to me, but I guess that communism, whether in actual practice or in the popular imagination in the US, means atheist. I guess I think that's Marx and Opie to the Masses thing.
Yes.
And,
that would have been.
So if you are one, therefore you are the other. And so he's really the main male clergy member that we see and he says to her at one point, "You're here living with the poor and helping them. I couldn't do that," which I feel like was very pointed because it wasn't earlier. There's some line about tell the cardinal to sell his mansion or whatever, which is a critique of the church that is constantly
the church is not made to look very good in this movie. I think probably looked way worse at the time than they're even made out to be. But I think at this point, now in the popular imagination, I think most people or many people have a positive image of Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker movement. I think when she was alive, not so much, and certainly not in the 30s. Well, and that PR shift is almost entirely the work of the church.
And also that she's dead.
Well, yeah,
So-
that she's not causing them trouble anymore. But I mean, that's as with so many things. If there's a person, who is causing problems for you, and ultimately their cause proves to be just,
the right one.
then yeah, the like, oh yes, we honor them now. Like,
loved her all along.
she was always doing God's work.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's that we don't see communism as such a boogeyman anymore.
Oh,
So
sure,
without that,
Yeah,
as we're worried that she's secretly being a communist.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
We don't need to worry about that. So we can see, so
this is a world that we're what 15, 20 years away from McCarthy and all the stuff in the 50s. So yeah, like it's a boogeyman, and it's again, religion is the opiate of the masses, but like giving them someone to hate is also the opiate of the masses.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Just give them we see it today. Give them an other to blame all their problems on, and they won't look at the actual source of their problems, which is, now I sound like one of the guys in the bar when giving a speech.
Well, you know what though? They're not wrong about a lot of
they're
things.
not wrong.
They just and need to get off the bar stools.
Right, exactly. Like, they have all these grand ideas, but and they're all these sort of stereotypical, like they single one out as being a bohemian, and the other one is as
one is Eugene O'Neill, who is an actual person. Right. I feel like the others are probably made up, except for the ones that she ends up sleeping with. But what I was going to say is, I think it is probably not an accident that the person who is key in her conversion is a nun.
Sure.
Because, and I have known some very good priests in my lifetime, but I feel like for a lot of people, they have much more positive interactions with nuns than with priests. Or there's nuns are more the ones who are where the rubber meets the road as far as service to the poor and examining the system, and advocating for change, which is not to say that there are no priests who do that. There are plenty, but I think a lot of people experience that through nuns more. I have several times I have had friends of mine say to me, "Oh my gosh, I read about this nun the other day and she was amazing." And I'm like, yeah. This is a surprise to you that nuns are badass? Like, what?
Yeah, they're like the good PR for the church.
Which is, now all that said, there have been nuns who have been implicated in some hinky stuff with kids, and everybody who went to Catholic school has a story about a nun who wrapped their fingers and, blah, blah. I think that, and we talked about this in our Keeping the Faith episode too, I think in a lot of cases, there were people who did not feel that they had any other option but to enter religious life.
Certainly in the 20s and 30s.
Right.
40s.
Whether that was because their family couldn't afford anything else, they were gay and wanted a way to avoid being in a heterosexual marriage. Yeah. They wanted an education, and that was the only, who knows? But they were in religious life for not actually good reasons, and they took their unhappiness out on the people. That's my theory for a lot of these. Yeah, well, people.
the problem with religion has the same problem that every other institute on the planet has, institution, whatever. It's populated by people. Yeah, that's the
flawed people.
There are as many. Now certain things may attract a certain type of people, but there are as many quote unquote bad people in the fast food industry as in religion, in the telecommunications industry as in religion. Mm-hmm. But it just like religion, you can make an argument maybe that religion attracts a certain type. You can make the argument that fast food attracts a certain type of bad person. But yeah, it's populated by people, and people by and large are garbage, and and that's your problem. Like even an institution that is designed around people rising above their worst traits is still filled with people who are constantly giving into their worst traits.
Yeah, well, and in religious life, there is this expectation that they are a moral example, and so it's just that much more stark when they are clearly not being that. And you could
potentially, agreed, and you could potentially argue that it is worse there because,
there's power feelings, and people put up with
someone
in a lot longer than they should.
Someone in the entertainment industry can give in to some of their demons on the weekends outside of the, they can talk about eating people or whatever. Whatever, whatever. And they can, just largely that doesn't affect their day job, and they fly under the radar for a while. And, whereas
there are not
people
really days off when you're in religion.
There aren't days off, and people in religion, their job is to rise above that stuff.
Yeah.
So the moment that they don't one time, they're a total failure.
Yeah. I think the church these days, and probably for the last, 20 years, has put a much greater emphasis on discernment and figuring out, do you really want to do this? Are you really cut out for this?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Take another 2 years. Are you sure? Are you sure? Because, and I say my theory about people who were just not suited for it from the beginning, and that's where a lot of the troubles, quote unquote, come from. That's just me. I don't know if anyone has done a study.
Yeah, just the data back that up. I don't know, but it seems reasonable.
But yeah, I think it's similar to, you need more premarital counseling to make sure that marriages are happy.
Yeah,
like just make sure that people are devoted to
what
it.
you're saying is the Catholic Church is doing the sort of vetting that police departments should probably do to vet the people that they let into those organizations.
Well, that came out of left field, but yes.
Sorry.
That's
just drawing parallels.
Just,
trying to alienate as many people. The 4 listeners that we have, if they're not already aligned with our political ideology, we will run them out of here.
Well, they're also doing the kind of vetting that political parties should do before allowing someone to run for office.
Yes.
If you abused any dogs, you can't run. But yeah, back to wherever we were 20 minutes ago, my original point. I think your point about her conversion is not really earned is fair because we don't really see that. And that's, I think if we got rid of some of this extraneous stuff, we could really focus on that. I think there's I don't know, like the abortion and then her second pregnancy and having the baby and all that is like part of her overall arc.
Yeah.
And in a way, I get why that was included, but I feel like you could have told a much more interesting story if you cut some of that out and just sort of referred to it peripherally.
Yeah.
Or, bring the focus in to, much more like a week. And then there's this weird bookend, a minute or so at the beginning and end when she's in jail for protesting something and they bring this drug addict in. I think she is, or she's DTing or something like that. And they put her in the same cell, and Dorothy offers her a cigarette and holds her and sings to her while she vomits and detoxes.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, I feel like what this movie really needed, as cliche as it is like a framing device of her sitting down to write her memoir or something.
Which she did a lot of. She had many, many books. So that would have made sense.
That's the perfect reason to skip around in time. It's, like you need to devote the time that you took to the beginning and ending bookend scenes. Mm-hmm. You could split that time up over several short, the granddaughter comes in and asks a question and, she's writing, I just feel like it needed a better framing device or like I said, just an explicit voiceover.
Something.
As I sat there holding that attic on the floor of the jail, I thought I remembered. Well, just something like as ham-fisted as it might be. I feel like the movie would have been better overall.
Well, this was ham-fisted, so it's just different ham.
Different kind of fisting.
Yeah. Well, and again, they don't give you a timestamp, so we don't know when exactly this last scene is, but it's sometime in the 30s.
Yeah.
She had another 40 plus years of this. That's a lot more story left.
You mean the last scene before the bookend?
Right.
The bookend is clearly like the 60s?
It's 63, it says. So that was almost 20 years. So why is that? So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
there's I have a lot of problems with this movie as a movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, as a movie, it's not very good. No. It doesn't really do a good job of telling the story that it sets out to tell. Like it tells a version of it. But this would have been a mini series or something like this would be a 6 episode or 8 episode Netflix show.
Add it to our list of things that need to be converted for Netflix.
Should have been Netflix shows.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a much more interesting, you can, by breaking it up through the mini series or series format, you could get different parts of her life that could all be brought to a satisfactory conclusion. Mm-hmm. It just, or left in a cliffhanger kind of state or whatever. And you want to tell a story, you just do what you can to tell the story. Like this is not perfect, a perfect version of telling the story, but like none of these ever are. There's embellishment here and there. There's There's just things that are not ideal, things that you would do differently if you had more time.
There's characters who are created to illustrate principles, which is what I think the whole Maggie character is. And I think earlier, like you said, I think it's a lot of too many cooks.
Oh yeah.
People had their, you got to include this, you got to include this. The Maggie character, played by Heather Graham, oddly.
Yeah.
They meet.
Why oddly? She was an active actress at this time.
Sure. Well, she doesn't have the the lefty glow that, say, Martin Sheen does.
Maybe not now.
Oddly, but they meet in a suffragette parade, and you can tell that it's fake because like they exchange introductions while they're punching out.
Oh yeah,
cops.
It's a very scene. It's a very written scene.
And then they're besties, and Maggie shows up at the Catholic worker house drunk, and then boom, she's living there, and she's taking Dorothy's bed, and Dorothy is having to sleep in a twin with her 10-year-old daughter.
And this is one of those parts where you're like, oh, this must have been weeks, and this is like a couple of days.
Yeah, it's really hard
maximum
to
in the whole span of the like the last 30 minutes of the movie take place across the course of like 28 hours.
Yeah. And there's something I thought that Maggie was on, heroin or opium or whatever the version was at the time, but it seems to be just alcohol. But anyway, she
says I need a drink. Yeah. So maybe.
But she's, although I am constantly reminded at the time, alcohol was not nearly as regulated as it is today. It was, who knows what she was drinking, but she steals the last of the money out of the box that they have, the savings box that they have in the kitchen, and Dorothy catches her, and Maggie is like, go ahead, hit me, I'm a drunk, I'm a slut, I'm
first of all,
blah,
Maggie
blah,
beats her
blah,
with a cane.
Well, yes.
You don't know.
Okay, but we're getting to the point.
Yes, the catharsis or whatever.
Dorothy's like, I see the love in you. You are loved. I love you. And it's very much like Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Yes. And then just burst into, and that's kind of her revelation. I feel like so much ham in that fist when we deliver that point. I feel like you had a lot of other characters who were in the background that we've established as people who live there who are problematic in various ways. You could have done that with one of them. I don't think we needed Heather Graham. But however, I do think there's a quote that she that is frequently attributed to her. I only love God as much as I love the person that I love the least.
Yeah.
Meaning you cannot serve people and belittle them or dislike them or, I'll give you food, but my God, take a shower,
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I really try to focus on when it comes to my activism is too strong of a word, but I was timely. I was at a retreat for church this morning. We're recording this at the beginning of Lent, and this was what do you want to focus on for Lent? And we talked about see Jesus in everybody, even the people who stink. Mm-hmm. And who are trying to scam you, and et cetera, et cetera. We talked about there's a gospel reading where Jesus said at the end of the final judgment, he will say, "You fed me, you gave me water. When did we do that? When you did this for the least people, you did it for me." And that's something of what's happening there. And I think to me, that's an important thing to remember. I feel like there are often people who claim to be very religious who don't seem to be looking for Jesus in anybody.
Oh, yeah. No,
because the way that they act is completely cruel.
Undoubtedly, the worst thing about religion are the people who practice it, like by and large. It's, again...
at a point, Dorothy quotes Gandhi, who is something along the lines of, I like Christ, but I don't like Christians.
I don't like his followers. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like most people, I would venture to say almost no one who actually follows Christ is living a very Christ-like life, because he gives some very plain and explicit instructions about what he would have you do. Like the only time that the living embodiment of God is going to be on earth, and he tells you exactly what to do. Yeah. And almost no Christian does it. Almost no church does it. I would say no, but like somewhere there literally is a church that is like, They give every bit of money that comes in. They give, they live the way that she lived, and she is living as Christ-like as possible. Even though I think part of her revelation is that maybe she's always not. Like there's a point where they make a point of her giving her daughter more soup than everyone else, and the guy's like, well, we're going to run out, and then her daughter puts some back, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, the point is, yeah, it is essentially against human nature to live a Christ-like life, because you want to protect. You have a survival instinct and an additional survival instinct to protect those who can ensure your survival, which is your offspring and your family. Yeah, and almost no one does it. Yeah, and so it is. She is portrayed as being about as close as you can get to doing it, but yeah, at the same time, like that is. As a non-Christian, as a non-religious person, certainly, but as a non-Christian specifically, the most frustrating thing about religion is the people.
And even being, I don't call myself religious. I say a person of faith, which is probably a distinction without a difference. But yeah, I am a person who would be classed in with religious people, and I probably am the faulty one sometimes too. I definitely am. I love my stuff.
Yeah,
and that's direct from the gospel. Sell your stuff.
Sell all your belongings. Give the money to the poor.
Follow me. And I have not done that.
It's easy. It's plain instructions that are almost impossible for any human to follow. Simple, to the point.
Yeah. Camel through the eye of the needle. Yeah.
Sure.
Though I've had a friend in college who kept reminding me that it's love of money is the root of all evil, not actually money. And I was like, well, who has money but doesn't love it? I don't know if
you didn't love it, you would give it away freely.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. The moment that you covet it,
right,
you've gone off that path.
It's very hard to be neutral about your money and be like, I have it or I don't care. So
yeah, it is. But on a lighter note, anyways, like we were talking about The Nun before.
Yeah.
This movie is full of great character actors from the time.
Yes.
First of all, the cardinal you were talking about is Brian Keith, who is in a ton of movies.
He's the dad from the original Parent Trap.
Is he? I didn't know that one.
Yes.
But he's in a ton of movies in the 50s and 60s and 70s and stuff. There's is it Alice Beasley? Who plays Frankie?
Yeah.
Who plays like the sort of secretary-ish admin?
Yeah.
She's great.
Yes.
Has a very character actory sort of face.
Yeah.
A distinct look, a distinct voice. She's been in a ton of stuff. Tracy Walter is in it.
I wondered if you would. Okay, I know him from Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's Bob the Goon from the first Tim Burton Batman movie.
Oh,
yeah. He's Joker's right hand man in that movie, and he's in a ton of stuff. I mean, he is.
Oh yeah, no, I looked him up to see what else do I know him from, and it's
so many things.
Very, very, very long list.
And the nun, who is Melinda Dillon, who is the mom from
the Christmas Story. It was great.
It's always great to see her in anything.
There was another guy who I thought was Bobcat Goldthwait, which would truly have been bonkers. It's not, but it looks like Bobcat around the time of Scrooged. I think it's just that he comes in wearing a suit and he's got that little
he's a bit of a young sort of And there's another guy, I can't remember, the tall guy who's always drawing pictures. Brian Libby is his name.
Okay,
he's in a ton of stuff.
He looked like Ron Perlman.
He does. He has a sort of a Perlman-esque look to him. Yeah. But it's full of like those people are, when we used to say character actor, that's what we meant. We meant people like them, people like Simmons. They had a look.
Interesting faces.
And they played small character bit roles in movies. Like nowadays, a character actor can be, as attractive as a lead, and still be a character actor. But back in the 70s, 80s, I mean, even back to think of people like Peter Lorre and stuff that were like, had an interesting look about them. That's what those people were. And this movie's just stacked top to bottom with these great character actors that have character in their face. And I love spotting them and picking them out. And, oh, he's in this movie? That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it is. That is good to see. Let's see. Did we have any other points that we needed to hit on? I
don't know. We've actually gotten a decent. I feared we would get like 20 minutes out of this movie.
Well, yeah, I was kind of like, I can't, there's not like this theme and that theme and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I think there's a lot of meat in here. It's just, the movie is just kind of meh.
Yeah. No,
So,
it's not a well-made movie. It makes it tougher to talk about.
I think biopics are tough to make. I think biopics, when you have an overarching authority of a major religious institution, are hard.
Yes.
I think this is a difficult story to tell concisely.
Yes.
Like, I think they had their work cut out for them, and this is not a judgment really on any of the filmmaker. I mean, it is, but
and I think they were probably striving for some level of authenticity, and that's the worst sort of biopic to try to make.
Mm-hmm.
If you can sensationalize it, if you can make Weird Al, if you make Weird, the recent Weird Al movie, or if you can make Bohemian Rhapsody or the Rocket Man, or if you can make these movies that have like a little bit of truth in them, like a kernel of truth,
like the Harvey Milk one.
But even less than the Harvey Milk one. I'm thinking more of like the ones that are just about going over the top and sort of being adventurous with the subject matter and kind of moving past this need to create a purely factual recount of the person's life, which is what I think this movie is trying to do. Like, while they may have taken some liberties here and there, it was all still in service of presenting a mostly truthful narrative.
Yeah. I think religious movies have the extra burden of trying to convert people.
Possibly. Although this movie doesn't do much evangelizing.
It doesn't. I think, though, they know that their audience is mostly religious people, and that probably informs it.
I think this movie is made for Catholics, and that's why.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why they're not worrying about it being the best. This isn't a movie that is made. I just mean, like, this isn't a movie like Passion of the Christ was a tool of conversion. It was made with a huge Hollywood budget, with Hollywood power behind it. Well, not that Hollywood, because we know who was behind it.
Oh God, yeah.
But
look it up if you don't know. I can't even talk about it right now.
It's a whole thing. That was a conversion tool specifically. The special effects were top notch. The everything. They were speaking in Aramaic. Like, it was a fully weaponized movie for trying to convert people to the faith. This movie was for the faithful. At least it felt that way.
Well, and I think, like I've said before, I think that may be why there's some of the shorthand on various things, because they knew that their audience was going to know about it. So, yeah. So, yeah, if you were looking for something to spark your spirituality, this is not it. If you are looking to learn more about Dorothy Day and how she did what she did and why, this would be a good start.
Yes.
As with most things, though, I think you really got to read what she wrote to learn more about her, which is always, her books are in my stack of to be read and haven't yet. I just watched this movie. So this is not a great movie. I would say it's worth watching if you don't know anything about her. It'll give you the cliff notes and then read more. So, and if you are interested in seeing stories of religious people who are not dicks, this is definitely one.
Yep.
And you can see Martin Sheen being weird.
Like, his accent is great because it's not like, he's not like, I'm French. Why do you think I have this outrageous accent? But it's like two steps down from that. So and it may actually be good. I don't know.
It may be like what the actual Peter Morin sounded like. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's just coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
It's just,
well,
it's
and
funny.
His character is interesting because he's got this like pyramid of importance in the movie. Like, he's super, like, he takes over, and then as it goes on, he's less and less and less and less and less, and he just sort of drifts away.
Yeah, he's like an inspiration. And then at some point they're like, he's not been the same since the stroke.
And I was like, the what?
He had a what now? How long has passed between him in the kitchen eating the whole meal in 5 seconds and him having a stroke wandering around the streets?
I was so irked about that. Yeah, they invite him over for dinner and a plate is put in front of him, and this is the Depression, and he just eats it all before anyone else has any. And he's spouting something about we should all make do with less so others can have some. And I'm like, yes, look, take the beam out of your own eye, friend. That's yeah. Anyway, which I imagine was on purpose. That's probably a real thing that happened. But
because at the same time, for all of his talking, he had yet to take any action.
Yeah,
he was not that different maybe that was to demonstrate he's not that different from the people in the bar who were pontificating.
Although
but not taking
Dorothy
action.
said, he didn't own anything. He lived on the streets most of the time. So he
Right, true. So
was
not
doing that.
Yeah,
but
when I
to
say
what
not
end?
any better, I don't mean he's the same as them. I mean he's not.
He's allowed to
He is
talk.
also in poverty. Living in poverty, but not doing anything to change it. He just has
Yeah.
great ideas.
Yeah.
He has great ideas that he's not acting upon.
All right. Well, I think we have thoroughly
Yes.
chewed all the flavor and then
Agreed.
some out of this movie. Folks, we would love to know what you think about this. Had you seen this movie before? Did we do it justice in our discussion? What do you think of Martin Sheen's accent? And who's your favorite character actor who was in here? And did you learn anything that you didn't know already about Dorothy Day or the Catholic Worker or Catholicism or, anything? Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you. You can reach us in a couple different ways. You can reach us on Twitter or Facebook or send us an email. Our handle is the same for all three. It's YSMY Podcast, YSMY for You Show Me Yours. You can send us an email at gmail.com. You can DM us on Twitter or Facebook. And you can also check our feeds on Twitter and Facebook. We post links to our new episodes, which are every 2 weeks, every other Wednesday. And sometimes just interesting things that we find out about other stuff. Information about movies and fun other things. I'm really selling it.
You really
I'm really
also
selling it.
you're not describing our Twitter account at all.
I put things on the Facebook
I know
page.
you're
I don't
describing
know
your
if you-
Facebook,
yeah.
your stewardship of the Facebook account.
Exactly. See, I'm a social media expert.
Yes. If
I
you want a
put
link
things
to
on-
the episode, go to Twitter.
Yeah. So you put fun GIFs though.
I respond to every episode with something.
with
yes.
with it, yeah, because there are a remarkable number. But anyway, but if you're not a social media person, and based on the way we described it, why would you be? You can find our episodes on most of your major podcast providers, specifically Apple Podcasts. While you're there, we would love if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you subscribe, you get the latest episodes right in your queue, and if you rate and review, you help other people find our podcast. We're at the point where you can ask your smart speaker to play. I think you have to say, play the latest episode of You Show Me Yours, and it will do it, which was not the case when we started. So that's because enough people have done the thing.
Yep.
And Alexa knows who we are.
Yep.
She doesn't play you a Willie Nelson song. She plays us.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, new episodes, like you said, every other Wednesday. And in the month of April, we are going to be doing something that we did last year. All of the movies that we've done for the rest of the time have been things that we watched before our first date. Last April's the anniversary of when we met. So we're doing this in April. Last April, we watched movies that we had enjoyed separately after we met. And we're going to do that again this year. So stay tuned look for what's in your queue and see what current movies since 2003-ish we're going to talk about.
Yeah, things are still a little up in the air,
Yeah.
but we will have watch your feed because we may have some bonus episodes in there.
Yeah, details TBD.
Yeah,
but
So
it'll be
So
new.
yeah, just watch for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be newer movies. The next few episodes, so should be fun.
Yep. All right. Well, in the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.